Hey, this is Ben from Propane Fitness. I'm just doing a quick Q&A video to answer some questions that have been sent recently, mainly on Facebook. The first one was about if you're trying to get shredded, do you bulk and then cut, or do you cut and then bulk? So a simple answer to that is it depends on your starting point. If you already have muscle mass and you just need loose fat to actually show what you have there, then the simple answer is cut. Okay, and do it quite aggressively, quite short, and then you can focus on adding mass once you're lean enough to actually make appreciable lean gains. If you aren't carrying a lot of muscle mass, then really your primary goal is to acquire that, because there's really no point in cutting down if you don't have anything to show. It's like trying to make a sculpture with no raw materials to begin with. You need enough to chip away at, enough to sculpt a physique. So the raw material of physique building is muscle mass, so that's your primary focus. Okay. The next question was losing lower ab fat. Like, how do you get rid of that specifically? Unfortunately, that is an almost impossible task. You can't really isolate any particular body fat deposits. You can't really choose where your body's going to lose fat. If you have what you might call stubborn body fat, it's a matter of getting lean enough everywhere that body fat has no choice but to go. So for me, lower abs are always a problem. They're one of the last places come in, but all that really means is that by the time they do come in, I'm pretty much shredded everywhere else. So if anything, that's reassuring, because it's like a waypoint, it's like a marker. I know if I can see my lower abs coming through, then I'm pretty much where I need to be everywhere else. It's the same thing with lower back. I tend to hold fat there, but there's there's all sorts of methods people have tried, and things like supplementing with your yohimbine and doing all sorts of like fasted cardio protocols, and ultimately those things may or may not work, but it's about getting lean enough, and that's all there is to it. So if you think you have stubborn body fat, the chances are it's just in an area where you notice it more. No one really complains about the stubborn body fat, in their subscap region, because for the most part you're not seeing that in the mirror every day. No one really complains about, their calves being stubborn. It's usually going to be your abs, because that's what you want to look lean when you're dieting, which is for most people for a holiday, for summer, something like that. So the simple answer is just keep dieting, do it sensibly, progressively. Give yourself enough time that you don't have to take any drastic measures or worry about how you're going to shift that lower ab fat. It will go. Just give it enough time. Next question was about using creatine when dieting for fat loss. Is it beneficial? Does it make you hold water? Well, creatine does make you hold water, but essentially it's making you hold water in the right places, which is in the muscle tissue. Because of course, if you look at research, and if you look at, this question's been answered by guys like Lane Norton before. You hold water in, subcutaneous tissue and muscle, and you can't really alter the ratio of intracellular to extracellular water, by manipulating sodium or anything like that. If you want to look dry and full, and basically you want to hold water in the muscle, not in the subcutaneous tissue, the simplest solution is to get lean, because you can't hold water or really mess up your condition if you just don't have the fat there to begin with. And a lot of people say, oh well, I was looking watery, I had too many carbs and all this. They were just fat. They had too much fat. It wasn't water. So with creatine, it has numerous benefits, which I don't really need to go into, because it's been repeated numerous times. But it'll help you perform better at the gym. Your strength will remain over. Assuming you're not a non-responder to creatine, in which case you may as well not bother using it on a cut or at all. But yeah, if you're dieting, you want to hold on to as much strength as possible. You want to perform the best you can. So just keep it in, because the water retention is not a bad thing. It'll help shuttle more glucose to muscle cells. It'll potentially boost levels of DHT if you take it in high enough doses. There's all sorts of benefits which are, outweigh any potential downsides with water retention. There was one study which showed that creatine might have a negligible effect on fat loss, but again, this is, in the context of a properly constructed diet, this is completely irrelevant. So just keep creatine in, unless you're a non-responder, in which case, don't bother. Another question, which I'm just going to dig out now, was about fast days. Okay, so basically we've got a guy here who doesn't like going low on calories during the week, and he was saying, well, what if I eat normally, I'm guessing sticking to a regular diet, fixed macro intake for 6 days, and then on the last day I have a meal in the morning at 8 AM and a meal at night at 8 PM, so effectively a 12-hour fast. And he's saying, well, would this give me a significant amount of fat loss? And to be honest with you, maybe. You can't really answer that question because it depends on your diet for the other 6 days, because obviously that's the majority of the week. If you're not in a deficit, then you can't really just lose fat by fasting for 12 hours. And I would say that if you're going to fast at all for 12 hours, I mean, you're pretty much doing that overnight anyway, so it would make more sense not to have the meal at 8 AM, to just extend the overnight fast for however long you think is appropriate. That could be up to 16 hours, 20 hours, or 24 hours. So for instance, instead of having that meal at 8 AM, you just have the one at 8 PM. So that's a 24-hour period without any caloric intake, and that's essentially what Eat Stop Eat, which is what Brad Pilon writes about it. That's essentially what he's recommending, and of course that does seem to work as a fairly simple fasting protocol for most people, but again in the context of a sound diet on the other 6 days. So the simple answer to that question is it might work. You need to try it. Your diet needs to be sensible on the other 6 days, but I'd suggest just having the meal at 8 PM. That makes more sense. A 12-hour fast is easily achievable just by sleeping, so I wouldn't expect to see dramatic results from that. That's everything for this week that I can think of. If you've got any more questions, just send them to me on Facebook or Twitter or on the forums, or any other method you can get in touch with me by email, whatever, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks, bye.